welcome to our video today. This video is a discussion about how you can be successful in CIT360. And I'm going to start by talking about the top 5 things that will make you successful. And then we'll go into more detail about the structure of the class and talk about some of the commonly asked questions about the class. So let's start with the top 5. If you were to look at the statistics for this class over the last several years, you basically have three kinds of students, not necessarily the students themselves, but the outcomes. A quarter of the students in the class get a B, between a B and an A in the class. That's about a quarter. A quarter of the students don't pass the class. And almost all of those that don't pass the class are receiving an F, meaning they didn't get a D in the D range. And most of them have a very low score, like 15% or less. And then the 50% in the middle are in the C range. So the point that I want to make there is a couple. First of all, yes, it is possible to get an A in the class, and because I've had that question a lot. And then the other is, yes, there are a lot of people who kind of give up for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's just because of what happens in life. You know, maybe you're taking too many credits, maybe other things come up in your life that cause you to not be able to focus on the class. The one that I want to emphasize here, though, is the group of students who give up because they just don't think they can make it. And I'll talk to that here in a minute. So the first thing in the top 5 that will help you to be successful is to stay engaged. This is really super, super important because unlike other classes you probably are in, I am your guide through the class. I'm not your lecturer. I'm not going to teach you specific things, but rather I'm going to be your guide. A big part of me being your guide is to help you know what to focus on and worry about and what not to focus on and worry about. So it's important, first of all, that you understand the class by reading the course materials. That's really important. I get about 3 questions a week that could be easily answered if people had read the course materials. And then the second is read the announcements, because every week I'm posting a guide to week 2, for instance, that tells you what to focus on. Don't worry about the stuff that's not on that list. I'm not going to talk to you about professional behavior until about week 8 or 9, so don't worry about it until then, for instance. But there's lots of other things. I provide you some clarification on things, some tips and other things that will help you to be successful. And then the last thing is participate in the weekly developer forum. It's only worth about 7% of your grade, but I will say that there were students last semester who failed the class just because they didn't participate in the developer forum. If they had, and they had that extra 7%, they would have passed. So, but in addition to that 7%, I think you're going to find that there is a lot of value that comes from participating. There's a lot you can learn, and there's a lot that you can give. The next thing is use your team. The number 1 key to success in this class is engagement with your team. What I mean by that is when you have a good team and you're meeting frequently and you're having good, effective teaching sessions, your success rate is going to go up immensely. So do that with your team. Try to use your schedule and stick to it. That will really help to kind of force you to be a little disciplined about how you approach your learning. Don't give up. So this is the point with my 25% of the students that kind of give up. Don't give up. You can pass this class. If you get halfway into the class and you haven't done anything, you can still pass the class. It's going to be a lot of work. I want to tell you about one student I had a couple of semesters ago who, because of some life stuff that was going on, I wasn't able to do really anything in the first half of the class. Showed up he scheduled an appointment with me, and we talked about whether he should drop the class or not. And I said, I'm not going to make that decision for you, but you should know that you can still pass the class if you work hard. The guy worked really hard. He actually got basic on, I think, all but one of his topics by the end of week 10, so that's really hard, because I think this was like week 7 we were talking. And he got an A in the class. So don't give up. That's the most important thing. To follow on with that, you might have heard a lot of rumors about how hard the class is and all these different things about how much programming it involves. Don't listen to any of that. There's a lot more anxiety than there is work in the class. I'm not saying it's easy, but you can make it. Learn iteratively. I want you to, the reason why you turn in a familiarity review every 2 weeks is so that you're constantly learning. And you could turn in, if I put together a program for collections and I turn it in as a familiarity review and I look at it and I say, hey, you're not quite there yet. These are some things that you need to do to get to basic. And I send that feedback back to you. You could turn collections in again, and you could turn collections in again. There's no limit to the amount of times that you can do that. Now, obviously, you only have 14 weeks, and now you only have 12 weeks. So you need to pace yourself. You need to turn in a couple of topics each week, and you will make it. So we'll talk more about the structure here in a minute. But learning iteratively is important. Every semester, I get a student who doesn't grasp this iterativeness and turns all of the topics in the last day of class. The problem with that is, well, one of the problems is that means I have to grade all of them at once, but that's my problem, not yours. The problem is that if you aren't completely perfect in what you turn in, it's going to be a disaster for you. I had a student last semester that did exactly this, did not pass the class because they just didn't get some of the things. You may not get something in week 2, but you can turn it in and I can give you feedback, and by week 3 or 4, you'll have it. So learning iteratively is important. And then the last thing is embrace the differences. I know this is a weirdly structured class. It's something outside of your comfort zone, but you're going to find that if you embrace the differences and if you jump in and have an open mind, you will learn so much in this class. And most of what you learn in that so much is not programming. So embrace the differences. All right, so let's switch over to the structure of the class, and I'm going to go through this a little bit. Okay, so the brown section is your familiarity reviews. The green or the blue is your meeting as teaching each other as a group. The green is your group schedule. The red is professional behavior. The gold is your journal, and the purple at the bottom is the developer forum. So let me go through these a little bit. First, with the familiarity review, and hopefully I can answer some of your questions as we go along here. What you do for the familiarity review is you pick a couple of topics that you're going to work on this week. You research them. If you're teaching in a team or somebody else is teaching in the team on the topic, that's just added information for you. You write a program. Doesn't have to be a big program, can actually be quite a small one. 5 lines is probably not enough. 30 lines is probably too many in most cases. But you write a program that demonstrates that you have an understanding of that technology. You include that in the familiarity review template. You can submit 1 topic at a time. You can submit 5 topics at a time. It's up to you. What you do in the template is you include a link to each of the Java classes you want me to look at. Not a link to the folder, not a link to your GitHub, but a link to the actual class or the actual .java file, okay? And for each .java file, tell me what you want me to look at there. If you're, if it's threading, tell me this is the class, this is the main class that calls the threads, and then the other one, this is the class that gets multiplied and threaded over time, or whatever you want to do. But I need to be able to understand what I'm looking at there. You do not have to include a video in it. You go to the assignment section or click on the assignment in the module, and you submit it through the assignment. There's only one assignment. That assignment says that it's due in the 14th week, the last of the semester. That is the last time you can submit it. The first time you can submit it is now. And each time you submit to the same assignment. It's going to say something like, hey, do you want to resubmit this when you try to do it the next time? Just go through it. Yeah, you do. You're only going to see the last assignment you submitted, but I'm going to see all of them. So you're just resubmitting to the same assignment over and over and over again. At some point in the semester, you're going to need to make a decision about whether you're going to go down path A or path B. You can make that decision at the beginning of the semester and change it somewhere along the way. You can make the decision in week 10 or 11 or 12 or 13. Although by 13 it may be a little hard to do anything but path A. But path A is you taking the entire semester to get all 14 topics to basic. This generally guarantees you about a C in the class if you do well on the other stuff. I've seen students who get as high a grade as a B- when they aced everything else, including the participation in the developer forum. But think about this as the C path. I know we're calling it A, path A, but this gets you a C. Path B it's the same for the first 10 weeks. After week 10, you're going to develop a personal, individual application, not something you do with your group, something you do on your own. You're going to submit me a written proposal for the application you want to create, and we'll get into this in more detail later. And then you're going to develop it using the technologies that you got to basic in the first 10 weeks. This allows you to get a grade above a C, because I'm going to then allow you to get a higher score in your familiarity for that topic than a basic, so you can get skilled or whatever. So that allows you to get a higher grade. So that is really familiarity review. This is the majority of what happens. This is the majority of what you'll do in the class. Okay, so let's go on. Meet with your team. So you're going to meet with your team on a regular basis. That regular basis can be determined by you and your team, but I suggest that you do it once a week. What you do in that primarily in that time is teach each other topics. This is a way for you to learn. You learn by somebody teaching you, and you learn by teaching others. You're going to find that you get a lot deeper learning during this experience than you do on your own. It's very important that you're participating, not just for you, but for your team. Sometimes I got some questions about, can we subdivide our team so they're smaller? You can do whatever you want within your own team, but I will, with this caveat, because about 25% of students in the class become inactive pretty quickly. That's the primary reason why I set up the teams to be fairly large. So you've got teams that are between 6 and 8 students. They're not going to be that high by the time you get to week 7 or 8. So I would suggest that you leave the teams the size they are and not do any subdividing. You can meet with individual team members throughout the week. That's fine. I mean, obviously I don't have anything to say about that. The more you learn together, I think the better it is. Remember, though, that the familiarity review that you submit is your own work, not the team's work. It's your own work. And I kind of keep an eye on that. I mean, if I see 3 team members submit what's basically the same program, then that's not good. That's what we call plagiarism. So be careful about that. Your team is going to provide a ton of value for you. This week or next, you're going to submit a schedule for your team. This is the plan of when different people are going to teach what topics throughout the semester. Okay? And then toward the end of the semester, you're going to submit for me an actual schedule. This is what you actually taught. What I'm really looking for, I'm not looking for the finite detail of whether you taught the right topics at the right time, but whether you just generally kind of followed a plan. So that's what I'm looking for when it comes to the plan. Sometimes you may be in a situation where everybody has abandoned your team except maybe 1 or 2 of you. If that's the case, let me know, and we can try to rearrange teams a little bit. But you'll probably find that you get a nice synergy with the people that are on your team, and to move to another team isn't always going to really work for you. So it's pretty rare that that actually happens. So the next one is the professional behavior review. Now, like I mentioned earlier, I'm expecting that you're not going to turn anything in for this until around week 8 or 9, even though the course materials say something like you have to turn these things in every time you turn a familiarity review in. That is not the case. These are independent. If you go to the section where it talks about turning in the familiarity review, for some reason I can't say that right now, you're going to see that on that course, in that module or that assignment, there is information about turning in the professional behavior piece. There's a template that helps you. There are 5 topics that you turn in for that. Your professional behavior with me, teaching outside your team. Great place for this is in the developer forum. Teaching inside your team. Here's where you can use links to your teaching, video links to your teaching, and submit those links to me as evidence of teaching inside your team. By the way, when you teach as a team, I suggest that you record it. You don't have to send anything to me. You don't have any deliverable to me with that teaching. But, like I'm saying, is you can use that as evidence of your professional behavior. 2 or 3 of those is fine. The next one is metacognition and self-reflection. This is about how thinking about learning deepens your learning. This is something you do by yourself. And I want you to tell me about how thinking about learning has helped you to be a better learner or to have deeper learning. And then the last one is around methodology. You're asked to pick an agile methodology and use it within your team. You are not doing any software development. So that probably means that you have to kind of adapt the methodology a little bit to work with your team. That's okay. This will help you to kind of become more familiar with software, with agile methodologies, even though it's not directly related to software development. I've ran many a project where we've used an agile methodology like Scrum and have not been doing software development. It works in a lot of different situations, but it sometimes needs a little adaptation. So what I suggest is with professional development, you start kind of identifying evidence of these things. And if you want to just throw them into a Word document or something to keep track of them, that's great. And then I'll let you know in the guide to week 8 or 9, hey, it's time to start submitting those professional behavior reviews. You do these in just the same way you do the familiarity reviews, in that you can submit them multiple times. I'm going to give you feedback. You can continue to adapt them and evolve them over time until the end of the semester. All right, the last thing is, as far as assignments go, is your journal. At the end of the semester, this is the only thing you don't do iteratively, at least because you only turn it in once. You're going to turn to me a journal report. This is a synthesis or summary of what you've learned over the semester. A great way to remember what happened over the semester is each week to write something about it in your journal. That way you can refer back to it. What I don't want you to turn in your journal report is a log of every week and what you wrote in your journal. That's not what I want. I want you to synthesize it. I want you to be creative. There's a lot of different things that you can do here. I've seen people build websites. I've seen them do PowerPoints and videos. There's a guy that wrote a nice long poem that was fantastic. And it was just about what he learned. So synthesize what you learn. The last thing I want to talk about is a developer forum. Each week, from week 2 to week 13, you will be able to participate in the developer forum. Again, it's only worth 7 points, but it's way more valuable than that. And it may be the thing that allows you to pass the class or not. So this is a great way to stay engaged, like I mentioned earlier. All right, so that is the structure of the class. I'm just going to go through my list of questions and see if there are any that I haven't already covered. The first one I often get is, what do I need to do in a program to get to basic? And I kind of talked about this, but it's different for each topic. There are topic videos. I think they're in week 2. I would suggest you go through and read or listen to each of the topic videos. Those topic videos explain each of the technologies. It doesn't include the diagrams, but it does the other stuff. I would suggest you go through each of those. They're going to tell you a little bit about what I expect to get to basic. There's also a document that has links to some resources for each of these that will help you to get started. So in a nutshell, I'm looking for a program that just shows me that you have a basic understanding. There's a note in the content about exception handling. You don't have to have exception handling for everything. There are some things that you just need to have it for. You need to have exception handling for HTTP URL type stuff because it's required, and you need to think about it. There's reference in the content to nasty path and happy path. All this means is the happy path is the path that your program will take if nothing goes wrong. The nasty path is, these are not my terms, by the way, is thinking about what you have to do if something doesn't go right. What happens if you're going out to get data from a website using HTTP and the website is down or it doesn't exist, right? Having thought about that and doing handling of the exceptions for that, that also applies to JSON. It applies to a lot of things. You want to think about that. You don't have to write this big program that handles every solution and does data validation and all that stuff. That's not what I'm asking for. I'm asking for a program that's just enough to show me that you have a basic understanding. A question comes up a lot, can we use an application? If we're going to be building an application at the end of the course, can we just use an application to show each of the different technologies? And the answer is yes, kind of. But in some cases, I'm not looking for, it may not lend itself to that. The example I often use is collections. What I want to see for basic is that you use the 5 basic types of collections and show me that you know how to use them. So the 5 basic types of collections, that doesn't mean I want you to see every list, every tree. I want to see one collection class for list, one for tree, one for set, one for map, one for queue. Okay, so that's 5. I only need to see 5. I don't want to see variations. I mean, you can do that if you want, but you don't need to. So in your application, you're not going to be showing me. I can't think of an application where you would have all those in your application. So there's a few of those types of things. JUnit. What I want to see in the application is that you are using JUnit to test your application. What I want to see to get you to basic is that you can use all the different assert methods, or at least most of the assert methods. You know how to use them. So you're not going to necessarily use every assert method in your application. So I hope that makes sense. Let's see what else. I'm just going to answer this one again. When do I decide which path, A or B, to take? Any time along the way, you can decide that. And you can change it. Almost everybody at the start of the semester says, I'm going the B path. I am getting an A in this class. And then about 7 or 8 weeks in, you're like, well, maybe I'm on the A path now. That's okay, right? No judgment. This is a judgment-free zone. Let's see. I think that's primarily it. I'll give you a chance to ask questions as a part of the post when we post it. But I think we've got it for the most part. I hope that this has helped you to have a little bit more understanding of what it takes to be successful in the class.